All right, welcome back to part three of this multiplayer video lesson here. Last couple lessons we've gotten so far, a little network setup here where I can now host, create a player, I can join, there becomes another player, and now I have the ability to communicate between the two, and you can see when I move on one player, the other one moves, and however we ran into a problem last time is I can't move on my client or the non-server version. And the other issue is that when I move on the server, both of these players move. So I want to fix that today and learn a little bit about how that communication is going to work between the two, because it's actually a bit of a complicated problem. I have two identical copies of a player that have been created, so their coding is all the same. Both of them use the arrow keys to move and the space bar to jump. So the question being is, how do I know, depending on which computer I'm on, which one should be moved and which one shouldn't be moved? They both have instructions on them to say, I move left when I press the left key and right when I move the right key, and then why is this not moving at all? So to understand how that's going to work, we need to know a little bit about how these players get created and named, because as you'll notice, they're not actually in my game at the beginning. They are created in my multiplayer here with that add player character. So I was going to do that last time here. So I'm going to add a little line here just to see how this works. I want to figure out how these guys get added. So I'm going to say, when I do this add player character, I'm going to say my name is, because you'll notice in my code, I'm creating an object. I'm giving it a name with this ID thing that came into the function. You can see by default it's 1. And then I add that character, add child, to the multiplayer. So I just want to see what's happening here. My name is, and then I will put name or character.name. So I get a little bit of a look. You can see a sneak preview there. But if I play my game again, this will take a minute to load. We can get a little bit of information in this debug down here to see what our players are named and how maybe we could use that in order to ensure the right person is controlling the right object. So if I just click on my host over here, let's see if I can see the debug a little bit. Oh, there we go, bring it up. There you go. You can see my name is 1, and that was when I hosted the server created that. And by default, the server is always ID 1. This is the main character, so that's a kind of handy thing to know to be able to figure out who's in control of the whole show, and in this case, who's in control of this one. Now, if I join over here, you're going to see that my name is, and this crazy long number, 4948525. This really just gets set up by when a peer connects, when you join to the network, you are assigned by the server a kind of a random number there, or a random number that's not any other player's number. And so we're actually using that peer connection ID to name our player. So the server is always 1, and each person who joins is going to be given a random number here, which would appear as a node name here. So that's really valuable to note, and we're going to be using that throughout. So now how do we ensure that the main character, that the server only controls the server player, and that each client gets to control theirs? Well, we're going to do this over in the player object. So if you want to get over to the player object here, notice we've got a multiplayer synchronizer. That's, remember, keeping everybody, all of them in sync, but it's not necessarily keeping control of them. So what we want to do is, right when this player is created, we want to let everybody know that the person who gets to control this player is the person who is on that player computer. So I'm going to set this up right at the beginning when this player gets created. Now, in the past, we've used a func ready for this. This is something that happens right at the beginning when something is created. The problem being is that ready is actually called in reverse order. So all of the nodes kind of move up as they are ready. So this one's ready, this one's ready, this one's ready, then this one's ready. So things can happen, unfortunately, before something else is ready. So this ready can be problematic. And the first thing I need to have happen is that this player needs to know who owns it. So we have another method that's a little more secure here. It's called enter tree. So this happens immediately when we start and doesn't go in reverse order. So we want to use this enter tree. It's very similar to ready, just slight differences about when it's called. And in this case, right at the beginning, I want to establish who gets to control this node, this player. And this is set up as something called an authority. Who has the authority to give actions to this? So I'm going to store the information in this multiplayer synchronizer just because it's handy in there, and I can kind of divorce it from the player script. So I'm going to store that information here. So I'm going to say multiplayer synchronizer with my $sign, means I'm grabbing a child node. Period. I'm going to set the multiplayer authority. And this is a built-in method in the node, in a root node. So all nodes have this now. And I want to set the authority of this player to the name. So whatever this is called. Remember, player is not going to be called player. It's going to be called either 1 at this point in time, or it's going to be called 4948525, or something else that the computer comes up with. Now that is currently a string, and this multiplayer authority wants, and if you look over here, it should be an int. So, but it's currently got a string name. So I need to convert this into int. Previously in Python, we've done the int function, and actually I'm not sure if we can actually do that. Let's see if it lets me. It does like that. There's another way I've looked at it. You've got the method, which we could say name period to int. So a method there to convert a name to an integer. Either way, it looks like both work fine. I'm going to go back to the good old Python way of int name. There we go, and see how that goes. So what I've basically done is I'm letting this this node know that the authority over this node is the person whose computer has joined it, and that happens right at the beginning there. So that's a handy part to do. And now it's a pretty easy little fix here. Right now, all of this physics process, this is all my moving, my jumping, my actions. All of this stuff is only stuff that should be allowed to be controlled by the authority, by the person who owns the player. So all I'm going to do at the beginning is put a little if statement here and say if that multiplayer synchronizer, that's where I'm storing that information, period, and I have a built-in method called the is multiplayer authority. So it's just a check to see, hey, are you actually the authority? I set it right up there. And if you are, then you are allowed to do all of this stuff. So I'm just going to tab that in by highlighting it all and hit tab. And so now all of my controlling actions are only being done by the person who is the authority. And if I am this player and I'm on, say, the server, and I'm not the client, then the server is not going to control it. If I am the server, then my ID is 1 and my player ID is 1. So I am going to be able to execute this. And let's see how that fixes everything here. Let's go back to multiplayer, play, and you should see in a second we've got a really quick fix of being able to say who is allowed to make movements to this. That's also why um, previously you would notice the server was working, but the client wasn't, because by default, the authority on the network, on all of the network, is the server. So the server ID1 always has authority unless you otherwise specify, which is what I just did there. So if I now click host, oh, and did not like that. Okay, so it does not like this int Python method. So let's fix that to name dot to string. I did not like the Python function. Sorry, not to string, to int. There we go. That should fix that. So good to note that int function does not work in Godot like it does in Python. Python and Godot, the GD script and the Python are pretty similar in most situations, but we are starting to see a few divergent things there. So let's retry that. And you will find, hopefully, it takes a little bit longer now, I'm noticing, in Godot 4 to load up, especially in things like multiplayer. If I click host, we can see here, it should only have that, and I can just double check. Yes, I can move myself. And when I join, we'll see now we have the two different players. However, the difference being now, when I move here, I am only moving the host player. And later on, we could change, say their graphical appearance, or put a color or a name or something like that to ensure that you notice. You can see it on the other one is moving as well. And then when I switch to the client, should be the left-hand person. And you can see the client is only controlling themselves now as well. And you now have the basis of a multiplayer game. Now there's lots of other things we need to add to make this work, but if you wanted to, I don't know, do a maze race type deal where you both started at different spots and you were trying to get to a goal before the other, you could have a working multiplayer game. There's lots of more things to be able to do, including in our next video, which is to be able to pick the person who you want to play a game with, and then also creating objects and other things like that, firing bullets, dropping stuff, having all sorts of other things in sync. But you've got the foundation here now of a multiplayer game. And let's look at the next video of joining a specific person, and you can actually play around with this a little bit.